Alright guys, wanted to make a quick video for two purposes, show you my video mode, but I also wanted to help out the homebrew guys. We just switched to Godot, most of us. Homebrew who are using MPF had to switch to Godot, and I went ahead and did that as well since I'm using fastboard. So video mode's not done yet, but let me show you what it looks like. So here I'm running mission MPF, and if I go back into my Godot editor, I can run that at the same time. I'm running a dual screen. I have my screen that's on the bottom of the playfield and the top, so that's the bottom of the playfield, and I just have to go to a different window. I'm running this on my laptop right now. So I can move this bar out of the way. So this is the game, Minitrack mode. Hit start. Just
Our competitors have come from
character.
I didn't come all the way down here to lose. Nope, I'm talking fish right now.
And I'm in test mode, so I'm just going to start
Shoot the skill shot before the clock runs out.
So here's what the video mode start looks like. You can see fast ones are worth more. So that's what that looks like. So let's get out of there. Obviously the mode's not done yet. I haven't made the splash when you blow the blow the ship up, and the player is just my name right now. I haven't done that yet. But one of the things I wanted to go through, so in Godot, we can send information back and forth between MPF and Godot. So it's two different programs. They're running at the same time. And it's pretty clear, most people understand how to send something from MPF into Godot. So like if I wanted to do that for this enemy, I would just do MPF and an event handler, right? So I add an event handler, and we would make an event name and a call method, and you know, you would choose a direction, whether it's parent or child. So I would pretty much always choose parent because I just put these underneath. So if I was going to, the parent would be what you're linked to up top. So this would be VM enemy top. So if I wanted to send an event from MPF, I would just name it, you know, whatever it was, MPF event, say enemy, and then I would create that. I'll create that event in MPF, and then when that event was called, it would call a method. So when we could say MPF event method, right? And then in my script, which this is the script right here, I would make a function called that method, right? And then if there was any arguments, you would have the payload, right? And then you would do some stuff here, right? So that would be what the, oh shit, I'm in the middle of another function. I didn't even realize it. So okay, I see what we're doing. Too many spaces there. All right, so there is our event, and we need a semicolon or a colon for that to work. Okay, so that's the event. So let's just that's known. Everybody knows how to do that. But what a lot of people don't know is how do you send an event from Godot back? How do you send it back? So if we look at our code for our server, so if I go into here, And we have this thing BCP server, right? So this is located, let me close it out and show you where it's at. So this is located, so this is our normal stuff right here, right? And if you go to add-ons, this is where all your code is that interfaces between Godot and Mission. So if we go in here, most of you are familiar with your regular classes, right? Your conditionals, your event handlers. So this is all the code for those. So when I created an event handler, it runs that code, right? And you can see I made some custom ones, right? So I got event handler, char selection arrow, event handler class. So these are ones that I made, right? But this is one of the default ones that comes with it. But if you go into, is it under resources or scripts? I can't remember. Yeah, scripts. So these, you shouldn't be touching these, but we're just going to look at it to see what the code looks like. Okay, so this is the server. So the server is the thing that interfaces between the two. So if we go down, we can look at functions. We can call any of these functions, right? Set status, defer gain, defer down, So when we look down here, we find two. These two are interesting, right? So we got send event, says post an event to MPF, right? And this is all this is going to send is the event name. That's it. There's not going to be any data along with this, right? So this might be, you know, this could be useful for something easy, or you have send event with arguments. So now you see in this event, our arguments are the event name and an arguments which has to be a dictionary. It does not take anything else. You can't put just a number in there and an integer or anything like that. It has to be a dictionary. Okay, and then if you read through the code, it says if there's no arguments, then just call send event, right? So you could use this for everything, even if you didn't have. But it's basically, it's going to send the event and it's going to send it with the arguments, right? So now let's go back into our code in Godot. So I'm going to send every time my enemy gets hit. So I'm not going to go through how this works, but I created a hitbox area, and whenever the bullet overlaps with the enemy, this is going to get called. And here's where I want to send an event. So if I was sending one without an argument, I would just do MPF server, send event, and this is the name of the event, right? And this is just arbitrary what I created. So I was experimenting with that, and then here's the one that I'm using because I want to send. I have the way I did it. I have Godot calculating how much the value of the boat is, right, and displaying that. Now I could have done it the other way around. I could have had MPF create a value and send it in every time an enemy is created. But I don't know, this was just a little simpler to just randomly, so I randomly create enemies in Godot. And if they're hit, then I tell it what the value was. I send that back to mission. So, but I have to create it as a dictionary, right? Because I can't just send an integer. So here's my dictionary. So I create a dictionary. Dictionaries use these curly braces and they're key value pairs. So here's the key. It's called amount. Again, it's arbitrary. And then score value, which, if you look at the top, I have my score value as an integer, and then I randomize it over here. Score value is random. And depending on if the boat's going real fast, it's between 2 million and 5 million. And if it's a slow boat, it's between 500,000 and 1.5 million. And as you can see up here, random 1 to 5. So if it's 5, so 1/5, so 20% of the time it's going to be a high value fast boat. 80% of the time it's going to be a slower boat that's a lower value. So that's all that is. So then we go back down here. So my score value, I'm going to send it. So I'm going to send this dictionary back into mission pinball framework, MPF server. So send event with arg. So this first part is just the name of the server, and this is always the same. So you're not going to change any of this. This part right here is going to be identical for you regardless of the name of your game or anything, whatever you're doing. The only thing you're going to change is the name of your argument, I'm sorry, your event, and your dictionary, which is right here. So now you're going to send that back. Now it's going to go back to mission. So now let's go back into mission. So we got to listen for this, right? So we'll go back into mission. So now I'm in my, so that's the server. So I'm listening. So my video mode is in my base mode. Okay. So let's go back down to where that is. So so my video mode is tiny. So this is all it is right here. If you look at it, this is my video mode right here. It's like not even 100, probably 100 lines of code or 150. So I got this enemy hit, VM enemy hit, and it's looking for KW arguments, right? And I was planning to play around with it because a lot of times when you look at how do you extract something from arguments and you look online, it's always going to do this for K val, you go through the KRX items, and then you kind of scroll through them because it's expecting a lot of items. But a lot of websites don't tell you, well, I already know the name of it and I just want that one. So you can extract that one. So right here is my amount, KWR. So this, remember, it's a key value pair. So here's the key, is amount. And I'm going to assign the value that's in amount. So let's go back and look at that. We'll bounce back and forth a little bit here. Why is it doing that? So remember, I called it amount, right? So my key was amount. And score value is just an integer, right? That's up top. And we put that in our points dictionary, amount. So there's a key, here's the value, right? So then when we go back here, it's saying look for this key and the value that's associated with that key, put it in this variable value. Now I could have done, I usually do a lot of stuff in 2 steps. I could have just done this, right? And not even had this. And this is just called another function that I use to score things, right? But I don't know. I do a lot of things in 2 steps, mainly because Python, for me, once you start putting everything in one line, sometimes Python gets confused for no reason. So I like to put things in multiple different steps. And this is just increment score value. This is something that I do. Let's go. Backwards direction. Oh, well, it doesn't really matter. It's way up here. Yeah, I got like over 10,000 lines of code in this game, so it's crazy. I don't know. This was the first time I ever did a game where I said, you know what, let's put everything in the base mode just to see how that would go. So here's my increment score. It's just looking for an amount, blah, blah, blah. And it kind of splits it up so that I don't have to do this in multiple places. That's all. So like if this mode is running, then make sure you score it there too. That's just for high scores. But this is kind of like the one that you would normally see, right? If player score, add the amount to the player score. That's kind of like what you would normally see. All this stuff is just kind of me being extra. So let's go back to here. So now we know what we're doing with our amount or key value pair, right? But how do we get to this point, right? How do we get to this enemy hit, right? Because in Godot, what we're calling is send with arguments VM enemy hit event, right? So we're sending an event. How do we make that event call this function? Now, most of you already know this. This is pretty simple. It's kind of basic. But let's just go to where I do that. So my base mode, those are just variables. And when you have mode start, you add your event handler. So these are all my event handlers for switch hits, right? Now, if you're doing all your stuff in YAML, then you're not doing any of this, right? Because it's all done for you. But I'm a hardhead, so I do everything in Python. But here's my event handler. So I added an event handler. It's called VM enemy hit. And whenever this event occurs, it calls this function, right? So this is the event which came from Godot. Right there's the event. And it calls this function. So let's search for that. And there it is. So it calls this function. Now, whenever you have an event, whether or not you use the arguments, you have to you don't have to handle these. So you have to have this here. Like if I didn't have that there, it would crash. Now it happens that I am using an argument here, but there's some that I don't have arguments for at all. But you just, it's part of the format. You have to listen for an unlimited amount of arguments. All right, so I think that should explain pretty good how I'm sending this value. And this would be good for, so I'm using it for video mode, but this would be good for a lot of other things. So like you could use this in a service mode, like have all of your service mode stuff be in Godot, and then just like whenever the final selection is made, send it back. Or I think probably the most common use of it would be for entering your initials, right? So like when you get a high score, you enter the initials, and then once they hit enter, and the name is or they hit what is start button to say, yeah, I've finally selected, hit end, start button on the end, it finally selected the name. Then you would send that name back to mission, and then you would capture that in your YAML for the thing. So that's kind of like what you would mainly use it for. All right, hope that helps. See you later, guys.